The door was locked from the inside. No sign of forced entry. No sound, just one clue: a bloody glove shoved halfway under the door. The victim, a young woman found lifeless on her bedroom floor. Police were stumped until one neighbor said they heard a noise that night. A thud, a whisper, then silence. Detectives pulled nearby CCTV. A man was seen leaving, wearing gloves, but one hand was bare. DNA from the glove led them straight to her ex. He almost got away with it. Almost. One bloody mistake brought the whole thing crashing down.
Like the video and share it with your friends. Subscribe to our channel for daily crime cases we uncover. Turn on notifications so you never miss an update.
The first thing Officer Landon noticed was the smell. That metallic sting of blood, barely there but unmistakable. The hallway outside apartment 3C was quiet, but something about the silence made his skin tighten. He knocked once more, then stepped back. Nothing. He tilted his head, catching the light reflection on the ground beneath the door. It was a glove. A single latex glove, halfway shoved beneath the doorframe. It was stained dark red, the blood soaked through like a spreading bruise. Landon crouched, staring at it, careful not to touch. He turned to the building manager. "Has anyone been in or out?" "No," the man muttered, voice tight. "She hasn't answered since Tuesday. Rent was due." The glove was the only sign that something was wrong, but it said everything. Landon called it in. Within 20 minutes the crime scene unit arrived. They forced the door open, splintered wood cracking under the pressure, and the stench hit them all at once. Blood, dried and old, not fresh, not recent. This had happened days ago. Inside, the apartment was pristine. The kitchen counters were clean, dishes stacked neatly in the drying rack. A plant by the window had started to wilt. Nothing appeared broken. There were no signs of struggle, but in the bedroom, there on the hardwood floor, was the body of Maya Ellison, 27 years old. She was curled slightly on her side, her face turned away from the door, one arm stretched outward as if reaching. The blood had pooled and then dried beneath her, leaving a dark halo around her head and shoulder. Detective Rosa Flynn stood in the bedroom doorway, gloves on, pad in hand. "No sign of forced entry," she said to no one in particular. Door was locked from the inside. Deadbolt and chain both engaged. The CSI team nodded in agreement. No windows open, no fire escape access, no evidence of a break-in. Everything pointed to one impossible conclusion: no one could have gotten in or out. Flynn walked over to the body and studied the scene. A pillow was slightly dented. Her phone was on the nightstand, face down. The screen was smudged with what looked like fingerprints, but that could have been hers. The bedroom rug had a small smear of blood. Drag mark. No, it stopped abruptly. "Check the gloves in the evidence bag," Flynn ordered, referring to the one found at the door. "Bag it separately. That's not an accident." Landon returned from the hallway. "Neighbor in 3B says they heard something the other night, around midnight. Said it sounded like a thud, maybe two, then nothing." Flynn looked at the glove again. Latex, medical grade, pale blue with heavy staining. She flipped it gently using a pen, revealing the inside. There was a hair stuck to the dried blood. Dark curled. "Maya had straight brown hair," she murmured. It was the first real crack in the silence. Forensics bagged the glove. The lab would run DNA. It could be hers, but if it was, Flynn scanned the small apartment. No medications out, no bottles, no signs of self-harm, no notes. The blood pattern indicated she had collapsed fast, possibly from trauma, but no obvious weapon lay nearby. A pillow on the bed looked slightly off-center, but that alone wasn't enough. There were no visible wounds, only a faint bruise on the side of her neck just below the jawline. Strangulation, possibly, but it left too little behind. The security footage from the building was next. They pulled the drive from the camera above the main entrance. Footage was grainy, poorly lit. Still, it showed a figure entering the building at 11:53 p.m. on Tuesday night. Hooded sweatshirt, jeans, black gloves. The person's face was not visible. Flynn froze the footage. Rewind 10 seconds. The figure had their hands in their pockets. But as they turned toward the hallway, left shoulder forward, only one glove was visible. The other hand was bare. She pointed to the screen. He dropped it or left it, maybe on purpose. The timestamp matched the neighbor's claim. Noise around midnight. A figure entering at 11:53, leaving again just after midnight. The return shot confirmed it, still gloved on one hand, still hooded, still faceless. Flynn stared at the screen longer than she needed to. "We get DNA from that glove," she said. "We get him." Maya's friends were notified. Her sister Carly met Flynn at the station the next day. Her hands trembled as she flipped through recent texts from Maya, nothing alarming, nothing strange, but she paused at one. It was dated the day before Maya was last seen. "He's been texting me again. I blocked him, but he used a different number." Flynn circled it. "Who's he?" Carly exhaled slowly. "Her ex. Ryan." Flynn nodded, writing it down. Full name, Ryan Keller. She broke it off 2 months ago, said he was getting possessive, showing up at work. One time he left flowers on her car, she never told him where she parked. Flynn added Ryan Keller to the suspect board. She requested his last known address, employment, and vehicle registration. Within hours, they had him flagged. Meanwhile, the forensics report on the glove came back. Blood, consistent with victim. Hair, unknown contributor, male. Inside, glove DNA, single profile match, male, full sequence available. Flynn stared at the page, run it against the system. 15 minutes later, she had her hit, Ryan Keller. He had been arrested once, minor domestic disturbance. No charges filed, but it was enough to get his DNA into the state system. Flynn stood slowly. Issue a warrant, bring him in. They had their suspect. They had a motive. And now they had physical evidence tying him to the scene. But when officers arrived at Ryan's last known residence, the door was unlocked. The apartment was empty. He was gone. And that was just the beginning. The apartment was still warm when they entered. The front door creaked with the kind of tension that comes from leaving in a hurry. Inside, the television was still glowing with a paused streaming menu. A half-eaten sandwich lay on the coffee table, untouched since sometime the day before. And in the kitchen sink, a single ceramic mug floated in a shallow pool of cold water. Detective Flynn stepped carefully across the threshold. She scanned the scene, not for chaos, not for struggle, but for haste. The couch cushions were thrown slightly out of line. A dresser drawer in the bedroom left open, some clothes gone, others scattered. Shoes missing near the front door. Nothing in the medicine cabinet but a razor cap and a half-squeezed toothpaste tube. "He ran," Flynn said. Officer Landon nodded, but not far. "He left everything but the basics. Passport still here." Flynn walked into the bedroom. A folder lay face down on the bed. Inside, it held letters, some opened, some unopened, all from Maya. Each letter was short. They dated back to a time when they were still together. Most were written in shaky, unsure pen. "Please don't show up at work again," one said. Another, "You can't keep sending gifts to my apartment. I don't feel safe." None sounded angry, all sounded afraid. The most recent one was dated just 2 weeks before her death. "I do not want to see you again. You are not listening. Please stop." Flynn photographed the letter. There was no doubt now this was not just a breakup. It was stalking, escalation, control masked as care. The crime scene unit swept the apartment. No laptop, no phone. No cash or credit cards, only receipts, some spare change, a cracked Bluetooth speaker. Flynn's eyes locked on a map of the state tacked above the desk. Pinned into the center was a small red dot. She stepped closer. The pin marked Lenox County, a rural area 3 hours north. In pencil next to the dot, a short note read, "Cabin, no service. Find any car?" she asked. Landon flipped through the notes. "He's registered to a silver SUV Chevy Traverse. Plates, KYC 832. Get a bolo out now. And check any cabin listings up in Lenox, fast." By late afternoon, they had it narrowed to 5 potential cabins in the area. Only 2 had been accessed in the last 72 hours. One had been rented online under a fake name but paid with a card traced to Ryan Keller's work account. That was enough. They mobilized a small task force. Flynn insisted on going herself. By midnight, the SUV was spotted by a Lenox sheriff's deputy, tucked behind trees on an unlit gravel road. The cabin sat about 50 yards away, its porch light dark, smoke barely visible rising from the chimney. Flynn, Landon, and 3 local officers approached on foot. The gravel crunched softly beneath their boots. Each one moved in silence, flashlights off, weapons drawn. At the door, Flynn signaled. Landon knocked once, loud and direct. "Police, step out now." No answer, a pause. Then a low shuffling sound from within, the creak of floorboards. Flynn knocked again. "Ryan Keller, this is the police. We need you to come out now." Still no response. Seconds later, the door creaked open, slow and reluctant. Ryan Keller stood barefoot in the doorway, shirt stained with what looked like charcoal dust. His eyes were red. His face looked like it hadn't slept in days. "You're here," he said. "Took longer than I thought." Flynn's voice was measured. "Turn around, place your hands behind your back." He didn't argue. Back in the interrogation room, Ryan sat slumped, hands cuffed loosely in front of him, paper cup of water untouched on the table. Flynn entered with the glove and an evidence bag, resting it gently on the table between them. "Is this yours?" Ryan didn't look at it. "No, your DNA is inside it." Still, he didn't answer. She placed the printed CCTV frame beside it, the image of him exiting Maya's apartment building at 12:07 a.m., gloved on one hand, the other bare. "Why only one glove?" "I dropped it," he whispered. Flynn leaned in. "Dropped it? Or shoved it under her door?" His lip twitched. "It doesn't matter now, she's dead. It matters." Ryan finally raised his eyes. "I didn't mean for her to die." Flynn stared at him. "Then what did you mean to happen?" He said nothing. Flynn stood slowly and walked to the door. Before she left, she paused. "Autopsy's not in yet, but they found bruising, signs of suffocation, no defensive wounds. You knew she wouldn't fight back." She stepped out. 2 days later, the autopsy report arrived. Cause of death, asphyxiation due to smothering, likely with a pillow or soft fabric. Time of death, between 12:00 a.m. and 12:20 a.m., consistent with the timestamp of the footage. There was no question now. Ryan had entered the building wearing gloves. He'd gone up knowing Maya was likely asleep. The door had been left unlocked, or maybe he had a key from before. He confronted her, likely quietly, and then ended it quietly. The glove had been his mistake. Maybe he panicked. Maybe he thought he was being clever, pushing it back under the door to erase prints. But he had left his DNA behind, and it was all they needed. Flynn sat across from him once more, now with the case folder thick and sealed. The glove, the footage, the ex's letters, the cabin escape, every layer pointed to one truth. "You killed her," she said flatly. Ryan didn't deny it. He only said, "I loved her." Flynn's voice dropped. "No, Ryan, you controlled her, you watched her. And when she finally left, you followed." He lowered his head. The case was closed 2 weeks later. Ryan pled guilty. No trial, no defense, just sentencing, life in prison. But for Maya's sister, Carly, it did not bring peace, just finality. The glove was sealed in evidence, labeled, photographed, and archived. The door was replaced. The apartment was emptied. But the silence that followed still carried the weight of everything that had happened. Because sometimes the loudest crimes start in silence. 3 weeks had passed since the sentencing. The courtroom was quiet that day. Ryan Keller said nothing. His eyes were blank as the judge read the sentence aloud: life in prison, no parole. Maya's sister, Carly, sat with a folded tissue in her lap, dry eyes, knuckles white. She had expected to cry. Instead, she felt numb. Detective Rosa Flynn stood in the back row. She had attended hundreds of hearings, but this one stayed under her skin. It was not because of the outcome. Justice, as far as it could go, had been served. It was the silence that followed. No statement from Ryan, no plea, no emotion. That silence echoed the very thing that had made this case unbearable. It started with a door no one could open. And now everything felt closed again. Flynn returned to the precinct that evening and walked past the evidence locker. She stopped. "Open 436B, she said to the records clerk. "Ellison case." Inside, filed and tagged, was everything. The glove sealed tight. Maya's phone, cracked but still working. A flash drive pulled from Ryan's backpack during the arrest. And one manila folder Flynn had almost forgotten about. She pulled it out and flipped it open. It held a small stack of handwritten pages. One had a coffee stain in the corner. The top one was a letter, unsent, folded neatly. Flynn read the first line: "To anyone who finds this. I don't know what else to do." Her pulse slowed. She pulled a chair into the records room and sat beneath the fluorescent buzz. The letter was undated, but the phrasing suggested it had been written weeks, maybe even months before Maya died. "He watches my window. I see him sometimes, just the edge of him. I don't tell people. They'll say I'm exaggerating. I feel crazy, but I know it's him. Every time I change my number, he finds it again. I hear things, knocking, scraping. I know he's outside, I know it. Flynn looked up. She had never seen this letter. It had not come from Carly. It was not found in the apartment. So where she flipped to the back. There was a faint return address smudged on the corner. Maya Ellison, 1404 West Harrow Storage Unit 11D. Flynn froze. She remembered. During the first sweep, Carly had mentioned something. Maya had moved some things into storage after the breakup. Flynn had sent a unit to check, but nothing relevant was found. The search had been shallow. No signs of weapons. No laptop. No leads. But maybe they had missed something. Flynn drove to the address alone. It was nearly 11 p.m. when she arrived. The storage facility was lit only by yellow security bulbs, casting harsh shadows across rows of corrugated doors. She keyed into the office, showed her badge, and asked for access to 11D. The manager obliged with a grunt and a ring of keys. Inside the unit was a simple metal shelf, a blue plastic bin, a small cardboard box labeled journal, and a laptop bag. Flynn opened the box first. Inside were dozens of notes, written on napkins, receipts, sticky pads, all from Maya, all scribbled like someone racing thoughts to paper. Many were crossed out, but a few were damning. If I disappear, it's him. He said I'd regret this, that I'd always be his. He knows where I sleep. I saw him again. The cardboard at the bottom of the box was scratched in one corner. A line was drawn in pen. No one listens until it's too late. Flynn sat back. This was a warning. It was more than a warning, it was a file. Maya had documented her fear, her instincts, everything. The system had failed her. The signs had been there, but no official report. No protective order. Nothing ever filed. Flynn checked the laptop. It was password locked, but a sticky note had been attached inside the case. Last text plus Dad's birthday. Flynn recalled the text from Maya's phone logs, the one to Carly that said he's texting me again. And Carly had mentioned their father's birthday was in June. She typed the combination. It opened. Folders spilled across the desktop. Audio, screenshots, photos from car, texts. Ryan Flynn opened the audio folder first. Clips mostly under a minute, each labeled by date. She clicked one at random. Static. Then Maya's voice whispering, he's outside again. I hear the gravel. I turned the lights off. I'm not going near the window. I don't want him to know I'm awake. Another, he texted me that he saw me in red today. I didn't wear red, I wore gray. How did he know? Flynn's hands tightened into fists. She clicked through screenshots. Dozens of texts from Ryan under multiple numbers. Some benign. Some deeply unsettling. You always look better asleep. I miss your scent. I remember everything. I'm still close, closer than you think. There were photos too. Blurry shots taken through a windshield, a figure outside an apartment building, a parked car that matched Ryan's vehicle. Flynn backed away from the laptop. It was overwhelming and damning. This wasn't just post-breakup harassment. This was obsession, paranoia, surveillance. And Maya had known. She had tried to record it all, to build a file just in case something happened. She had done everything but report it. Because she knew no one would believe her until it was too late. Flynn returned to the station and built a new report, the unofficial file, the truth beyond the arrest and trial. She called Carly. Did you know she was keeping records? Flynn asked. Carly was silent for a long moment. I didn't. I had no idea. She always said she was fine. I should have known. Flynn shook her head gently, even though Carly could not see. You didn't fail her. He did. The system did. Carly exhaled. Can I read it? The letters? You can, but not yet. Let me finish logging it, then it's yours. Flynn printed and scanned everything into a secure archive. She wrote her own final note at the bottom of the report. The glove caught the killer. But she tried to warn us long before that. Justice had been served in court. But Maya had solved her own case months before she died. No one had listened. Not then, but they would now. The fourth week after Ryan Keller's sentencing began like most others, gray skies, stale coffee, and more paperwork than closure. Detective Rosa Flynn sat at her desk, still haunted by the storage unit contents. Every file Maya had collected, every line scribbled in fear. It felt like an unfinished story despite the conviction. Flynn had filed everything, the letters, the photos, the audio. But one item remained unexamined. A small, unlabeled cassette tape found in the bottom of the blue bin. No case, no markings, just a short strip of old magnetic tape. At first she assumed it was blank, an oversight, but the weight of it sat on her desk for days, refusing to be ignored. Late Thursday night, when the bullpen had emptied and the noise died down, she pulled a dusty tape recorder from the evidence room archives. She loaded the cassette with a faint click. The room felt colder. She pressed play. The first 10 seconds were dead air, faint hissing, the usual static. Then a shuffle, a sharp inhale, and then Maya's voice. "If you're hearing this, I'm gone or close to it. I don't know when I'll play this back, maybe never, but I need it to exist." Flynn stopped breathing. "I've tried to leave him, I've told people, but no one hears it right. They think I'm being dramatic. They think I'm just scared of being alone, but it's not that." A pause, a trembling breath. He's been watching. He knows where I live, what I wear, what I eat. Once I found my bedroom window open and I didn't open it. Nothing was stolen, just moved. Like he wanted me to know he was there. I can't prove it, but I know. The tape hissed again, the quality wavered. Flynn adjusted the volume. I found the glove before. Flynn froze. That glove, the blue one. I found one under my car seat a month ago. Same kind. I thought maybe it was mine. But I don't use gloves like that. And it was clean, too clean, like it was waiting. Flynn scribbled the date, backdating the audio using file metadata, 4 weeks before Maya's death. He leaves signs, little ones. He wants me afraid but confused, and it's working. I question myself constantly. Did I see him? Did I hear that? Am I imagining it? And when I say it out loud, I sound crazy, so I stopped saying it. A long silence followed, just soft breathing. Then I've started recording everything. If something happens, if I disappear, look at the folder in storage, the bin, the tapes, the texts. He's there, always. Maybe no one listens now, but someone will. The tape clicked and ended. Flynn sat back, hand over her mouth. This was not just a statement. It was a time capsule, Maya's final weapon. And the most terrifying part, she had known. She had found the glove before. Ryan had planted one to scare her, and another after her death. Flynn loaded the tape into a digital converter. She saved a clean copy and labeled it Primary Exhibit, Maya Final Voice. Then she typed a new page into the file. The glove was more than evidence. It was a signature, a threat. She pushed back from her desk. This wasn't just closure, it was confirmation. He had stalked her, toyed with her, terrorized her. And Maya had lived in that fear long before her final day. The next morning, Flynn called Carly. "I found something," she said quietly. "You should hear it. It's not for the record, but it's for you." They met in the records room. Flynn set the audio on a private player and hit play. Carly did not cry, she just listened. Her hands shook, but her expression hardened with every word. "I wish I'd known," she whispered when it ended. "I should have seen it." Flynn looked at her. He isolated her. "It's what people like him do. It wasn't your failure, it was his design." Carly nodded slowly. "I want her voice heard. I want people to know what she went through, not just how she died." Flynn hesitated. Then she opened her drawer and pulled out a press inquiry form. "You sure?" "Yes," Carly said. "We share the audio. We release her letter. Her story wasn't just a crime. It was a warning." 1 week later, the audio went public. The department partnered with a crime prevention organization, using Maya's voice as a centerpiece for a national awareness campaign. Listen the first time. The public response was immediate and overwhelming. Social media trended with the hashtag Maya Spoke. Victims from across the country shared stories of being ignored, of reporting stalkers only to be dismissed, of gut instincts being downplayed until it was too late. Flynn gave a statement at a press conference, her tone composed but firm. "We often wait for bruises before we believe fear. Maya Ellison told us she was afraid. Her glove, her words, and her recordings were her legacy. We failed to act then. We will not fail again." The department created a dedicated task force for behavioral pre-escalation cases, reports without physical violence but with clear patterns of stalking or manipulation. The unit's name was chosen by Carly, the Ellison Initiative. Carly, too, found her own voice. She spoke at a victim advocacy seminar weeks later, not with grief but with purpose. "She did not die without warning," Carly said into the mic. "She died while warning everyone." And now, finally, we hear her. But Maya's case had one more layer left, one that would not appear in court documents, not in audio, not in letters. Flynn was contacted by a former coworker of Maya's, a man named Daniel. He had worked with her 2 years prior, back when she was still with Ryan. She told me something, he said, but I didn't understand it at the time. She said she kept a journal where she wrote things Ryan wouldn't want her to say aloud. She said it wasn't safe to say it around him, like physically unsafe. Flynn leaned in. Do you know where it was? Daniel nodded. She told me once. It was taped behind a drawer in her old desk. I thought she was being poetic. Flynn made a call to Maya's former apartment management. The unit had been cleaned out. The desk had been moved to the basement storage for disposal. Flynn drove there herself. In the dusty basement behind a water-stained sheet of plywood she found the desk. Drawer warped but still in place. She slid it out, nothing inside, but behind it, taped with electrical tape, brittle and dark, was a small black notebook. She peeled it free. The cover was blank. Inside were page after page of fear. He checks my phone. I deleted this app and he reinstalled it without asking. He knew I was at the cafe even though I never posted it. He said I should be grateful he hasn't hurt me yet, like it's a gift. Flynn flipped through slowly. The final page read, "If I'm ever found, tell them I told you first. I always knew." She closed the journal and held it in her hands. Maya had been building a map, a trail of clues. She had hidden a journal, recorded tapes, stored folders, even pre-documented her death. And the world was finally catching up. Back at her desk, Flynn filed the last piece of evidence. She whispered softly to the folder as she closed it. "You solved your own case, Maya. I'm just here to make sure they believe you now." The journal was filed, the recordings archived. The glove, now encased in an airtight display, had been moved to a quiet corner of the precinct's training room, a silent reminder for new recruits that not all evidence shouts. Sometimes it whispers, and sometimes that whisper is enough to save a life. Detective Rosa Flynn, however, was not at peace. The Maya Ellison case had officially closed, but threads still tugged at her attention. The kind that scratched at instinct, the way a rough collar irritates the back of the neck. One of those threads was a digital folder she had only skimmed weeks ago, buried deep in Maya's laptop. It was labeled Workplace Harassment Unsent. Flynn opened it again late one night. Inside were screenshots, time-stamped journal entries, and unsent emails Maya had drafted to her former HR department. All cataloged, all precise. He came to the parking garage again. I asked how he found me. He laughed. "My boss doesn't think it's serious. Told HR about the flowers he left on my windshield. They said it wasn't a workplace issue. I'm going to stop trying. No one wants to put it on the record. Maybe I'll just record him next time." Flynn's eyes narrowed. These entries weren't vague. They were evidence. Names, dates, patterns. Ryan had visited her workplace 4 times after the breakup. Each time she had reported it. Each time it had been minimized. She called Maya's former employer the next morning, Keller Tech, an engineering firm, ironically founded by Ryan's uncle, a fact Maya had mentioned in her storage letters and one that now felt heavier. A receptionist answered, chipper, uninformed. Flynn identified herself. "I'm following up on the Ellison homicide case. We've reopened part of the file for internal review. I need to speak with your head of HR." The receptionist paused. "That's Ms. Linda Travis, but she's been out, family leave. Who's covering? I think someone from legal is handling her inbox." Flynn didn't like the tone. "Transfer me, please." A long hold. Then a male voice, formal, firm. "This is David Loring, legal counsel for Keller Tech. How can I help you?" Flynn introduced herself again. "We've uncovered documents indicating Ms. Ellison attempted to report harassment prior to her death. I need your department to provide any logs or communication records she filed with HR." A pause. Sharp, deliberate. "Detective, as you're aware, Keller Tech was not implicated in the criminal investigation. Ms. Ellison was no longer an employee at the time of her passing. We cooperated fully with previous inquiries." "Yes," Flynn said evenly, "but I'm not calling about cooperation. I'm calling about negligence, more silence. I'll prepare a formal request," she added, "but you should know there are internal emails in our possession that document dismissal of repeated complaints. If you stonewall, this could become public record under the new advocacy initiative her family is pursuing." The line tightened. Then, reluctantly, "We'll review our logs and respond accordingly." Flynn hung up. She turned to Landon. "They buried it." He nodded, "And now they're trying to erase the dirt." The next day, a brown envelope appeared at the front desk. No return address. No tracking number. Just two words printed neatly on the front, 4DET. FLYNN. Inside was a single flash drive and a folded note. She told the truth. I couldn't say anything while he was alive. He watched everything, but now someone needs to know. There was no signature. Flynn plugged the drive into a secure station. A single file, video format, time-stamped 5 months before Maya's death. Flynn hit play. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Security camera angle. Parking garage, likely at Keller Tech. Maya walked briskly to her car, phone in hand. Then from behind a column, Ryan stepped into frame. He said something. She froze. They exchanged words. She looked frightened. He moved closer. She backed against the driver's door. He reached for her shoulder. She flinched. Seconds later, he walked away. Flynn paused the frame. It was date-stamped. It showed physical contact. It showed distress. It was surveillance taken from a system Keller Tech operated. They had it. They had seen it and done nothing. She called Carly immediately. Someone from the inside just confirmed Maya's complaints were buried. Carly's voice was quiet. Are they going to be held accountable? They will be, Flynn said, even if only in public opinion. The footage and files were added to the expanding advocacy case. Flynn pushed for the department's Internal Affairs Division to release a public summary. The mayor's office approved a joint statement with the DA. Within days, Keller Tech's silence cracked. News broke. Tech company ignored stalking warnings before employees murder. New evidence shows HR failures in Maya Ellison case. Glove killer case opens corporate accountability debate. The glove had started the story. Now Maya's paper trail, her recordings, her tape, her journal, her video, was finishing it. Flynn stood at the press podium one last time. We ask victims to document, to speak up. Maya did all of that. She gave us everything but a signature in blood, and still she was silenced. Reporters asked questions about lawsuits, policy, next steps. Flynn focused on one truth: she was enough. From the beginning, her word, her fear, her instincts, they were all enough. We must build systems that listen the first time. That evening, as the precinct lights dimmed, Flynn visited the training room again. She stood in front of the gloves display case. There were other cases, other folders, other calls waiting. But this one was different, because Maya had solved it from the inside. She had left a breadcrumb trail so detailed, so haunting, that the crime itself became secondary to the failure to prevent it. Flynn whispered aloud, "You weren't just a victim, you were a witness." And finally, after all the echoes, all the delays, someone was listening. It was a quiet morning when the final piece arrived, not through official channels, not through any evidence database or press inquiry, but in the simplest, oldest form imaginable. A white envelope, hand-delivered. No return address. Postmarked from Lenox County, the same area where Ryan Keller had fled before his arrest. The name scrawled on the front, Detective Rosa Flynn. Inside, folded once, was a photo and a note. Flynn slid the photo out first. It showed a manila folder sitting open on a cabin table. Inside it, more photos, letters, what looked like a printout of Maya's restraining order request, one that had never been filed. The handwriting on the back of the photo was unmistakable. "You missed one." R. Flynn stared at the image. She remembered the cabin where Ryan had been arrested. They had done a full sweep, or so she thought, but somehow something had been overlooked, or Ryan had planted it after the fact, hoping it would one day be found. Maybe he thought it would prove he had tried to control himself. Maybe he wanted to show the world she had exaggerated, or maybe he wanted to twist the knife one more time. Flynn didn't wait. Within 2 hours, she was back in Lenox County. This time with a forensic team, 2 state investigators, and a warrant so airtight it could choke. The cabin door creaked open again. The air inside was stale but familiar. A thin layer of dust had settled over the furniture. Flynn moved to the table in the photo. Same wood grain, same crack in the corner. She bent down and opened the drawer. Inside, just as the photo suggested, was a worn manila folder still open. She pulled it out. Its contents stopped her breath cold. There were photographs of Maya sleeping, reading, sitting at a cafe, all taken from a distance, all labeled with date and time. There were also printouts of emails she had drafted, retrieved somehow from her cloud or her phone. Then, strangest of all, There was a page with Ryan's handwriting at the top. Proof of MY restraint. Flynn read the first paragraph. It was a grotesque self-justification. She didn't want to be with me, but she belonged to me. I never hurt her, not once, until the end. I waited, I watched, I let her live her life. That was restraint. Flynn slammed the folder shut. It wasn't evidence of control. It was a record of entitlement. This folder wasn't about proving innocence. It was a manifesto, an attempt to rewrite the narrative even after death. Ryan Keller hadn't just stalked Maya. He had believed to the very end that he was the victim, that he had suffered the injustice, that her fear was a betrayal. Flynn bagged the folder herself. Back at the precinct, she reviewed the contents page by page. The last entry chilled her most of all. It was a note, undated, scribbled at the bottom of a grocery receipt. If she just stayed quiet, if she just stayed mine, none of this would have happened. That was the truth, not in court. Not on paper, but in ink, in his own words. Flynn called Carly again. I found the last folder, she said. He left it at the cabin. Carly exhaled. Did it change anything? Flynn paused. It confirmed everything. Carly didn't ask to see it. She had seen enough. Then seal it, she said, and let her rest. A week later, Maya's memorial was held again, this time not as a vigil for a victim, but as a celebration of a whistleblower, of a woman who had left behind more than pain. She had left structure. Because of Maya, 3 states passed new legislation requiring employers to file and follow up on stalking or harassment complaints, even when no physical violence was reported. Because of Maya, over 200 survivors wrote in to local precincts, encouraged by the knowledge that their fear was enough to be taken seriously. And because of Maya, the Ellison folder protocol became standard, a simple template for documenting patterns of behavior, texts, visits, photos, signs. Survivors used it to build timelines. Officers used it to begin cases, all from one glove, all from one folder behind a locked door. Detective Flynn stood again in the evidence room, this time to deliver her final entry into the Ellison file. The cabin folder, logged, tagged, and sealed. She stood for a moment longer than usual, staring at the case number, E4482ME. No case had marked her like this. No victim had stayed in her mind the way Maya did, because Maya hadn't died in silence. She had died shouting through layers of subtle, deliberate violence. And now her voice echoed in policy and reform in the quiet moments when a young officer decides to believe the softest voice in the room. Flynn stepped out, folder shelved. Done. Outside the precinct, she found a letter on her windshield. Flynn froze. It was pale yellow, folded carefully. No markings. She unfolded it slowly. Thank you for listening. No name, no threat, just closure. She looked around. No one stood nearby. But for the first time in months, she didn't feel watched. She felt seen. Flynn stepped back, looked up at the sky. Sometimes the investigation ends not with a bang, but with the softest kind of justice. One voice, one folder, one glove, and this time someone listened.
What are your thoughts on this case? Let us know in the comments. Like the video and share it with your friends. Subscribe to our channel for daily crime cases we uncover. Turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Click here to watch the next video as we uncover another thrilling crime case.